Mr. Ali, can you hear me?
I can.
All right. Can you hear me?
There it is. There it is. There it is. There's me.
All right, we got a little action. All right. Let's see if we
All
get
right.
Miss Stephanie.
Iman, you on here? Can you hear me?
I
I
can
can't
hear
hear
you.
you. Okay, you can hear me?
I can hear you. Can you all see if
All
y'all
right.
can get in? So
You trying to add more people?
I need some light, y'all. I don't have any light. Hold on.
Are you trying to add more people?
Yes. So no, this is it. So actually,
Okay.
I'm trying to see if you all, if people can actually see me. I'm trying to get them to log into Facebook to see if they can actually see me.
Hold on,
So
I'm
if
gonna
you
go
all
on your
can, if you
Facebook
all can
right now.
log in to see if you can see me, see it live.
No, I'm not able to see it live because I think you have to press
Okay.
present first, right?
Yeah. Did you not do that? It says
No,
live on
'cause
the thing. I need for you to hit
it
live.
it does, but I think it's doing that because we've been backstage that long.
Okay,
So
but I
what's
need for you
happening
to.
with StreamYard is you have to set it up for like when you created the original stream event,
Uh-huh.
StreamYard might have set it up originally. When you set up this second stream, did you set it up? Did you send it to this channel, to your Facebook page as a channel?
I did, as a destination. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not live right now though. I'm on
Do
your
I need to
Facebook
press
page.
present?
Okay.
Do I need to press present?
Yeah. Hit present. Yeah. Hit present.
Present is going to give you like screen share and stuff like that. That's internal to StreamYard.
Okay. So no, don't do that then. Okay. So we'll just go ahead and maybe we can. I don't know. Post this live afterwards, but this is a lesson learned, right? Things of what not to do. But I thank you all for your patience. Thank you so much. So we're just gonna go ahead and if it's not gonna air live, it's just not gonna air live. But at least we can get the content out that I'm actually trying to share. So let me go ahead and again, I want to apologize to everyone that will be watching this as a replay. I do apologize for all the inconvenience, and the delays, with airing this. It is very, very important information that I think is necessary to be shared and to be heard and bring about, resolution within the crisis that's going on within the Black community. So I just want to give you a little overview, as I always do, about Live. Again, welcome and thank you for your patience and thank you for watching the replay. Just a little about Live. Live stands for Live in Victory Every Day, and the mission for Live is to empower, equip. Is to The mission of Live is to empower, equip, and educate people to think victoriously, to speak victoriously, which ultimately leads to live life that Jesus. The Word of God says in St. John 10:10, it says that Jesus come that we may have life and have that life more abundantly to the full, to the overflow. So again, and we also talk about the 7 key pillars of the politics, spirituality, and where we come in and we bring motivation of teachers and speakers, people that are actually operating and functioning within their God-given purpose to encourage us to step out and do that what God has actually called us to do. So tonight, I'm really excited about what's going to be taking place. Again, I know this is going to be great because of the adversity that we actually experience now without this being on live. So I know it's going to be great content. We have some great speakers that's going to be on tonight. I'm actually going to do a brief bio that we have here. The first person I want to tell you about is Abdul, and I just want to give you a brief bio about him, and then he's actually going to come in and he can tell you some things about himself. So give me one moment. Let me just turn here and read your bio about him. Abdul Abdul Ali is the past chairman of the Cabarrus County GOP and past chairman and co-founder of the NCGOP Black Enterprise, a Black Conservative Forces Coalition. Under his leadership, North Carolina has become the leader in ministry participation in the GOP, with North Carolina having more minorities in the GOP. With North in the again, I wrote this. I'm reading it from my papers, and it's kind of, so forgive me for that. So having more minorities in the GOP, with North Carolina having party leadership than any other state, Abdul has worked in over 60 counties, organizing and coordinating outreach and engagement events for county GOP and candidates like President Trump, Mark Robinson, and Ted Budd. In other words, Abdul leads from the front. As a Christian, veteran, and family man and entrepreneur, Abdul is fighting to ensure future generations can enjoy the freedom we have and come to cherish. The next person I want to introduce is Winfred Felton. Winfred he surrendered his life to Christ in March of 28. Was that 28 or 26? Is that 26?
Mark 86. Come on now. Come
Of
on.
March
I'm
20,
not here.
was it March 20? Was it March 26? Was it March 26 of 1986? No, I'm talking
Yes.
about the day.
Okay,
March
yes.
26, March 26 of 1986 in May. In May of 1990, he answered God's call to serve in a full-time support capacity as a minister of the gospel. Through the years, he had the awesome privilege to be taught by godly people and to teach God's people. Winfred has served in various capacities over the past 12 years in God's kingdom. The Lord has blessed Winfred to serve Winfred Church in Christ. Winfred has provided training for bishops, elders, pastors, preachers, campus ministers, tribal chiefs, kingdom tribal chiefs throughout the U.S., Ghana, South America, continents Africa, Guyana, Togo, and Nigeria. Winfred recently celebrated, is it 35 years of marriage?
Yes, ma'am.
35 years of marriage to his college sweetheart, which is my sister, Leslie Parker Felton. They have from their union 2 children, Camber and Isaiah Felton. And of course, we have here my son, Nathaniel J.D., which is Nathaniel Jari Don Salam Adan. Don Salama Adan. Nathaniel, let's see.
She's stressed, bro. She's stressed.
Better known as Majesty, is a professional American musician, singer, songwriter, rapper, producer, engineer, actor, TED Talk speaker, and best-selling published author. He is a former children's mental health counselor and teacher, personal trainer, and a current PhD study at Queens College for Theology. Adon is a CEO and co-founder of Millennium Kingdom and brand new record label, publishers, music, publishing that function as a non-government organization with the help of his wife, Hadia Adon, who has taken over as the role of the manager and owner of vegan bakery, Sweets and Treats. They are feeding and ministering to the poor. He has received a certification in crisis management, where he's actually received that too from Cornell University. Jerry, make sure that I'm saying that right. He is a first responder of the American Red Cross. He also received his associates at Sand Hills in arts degree in English. He received his bachelor at North Carolina Central University in interpersonal studies. Is that correct? And he actually have his master's degree in business entertainment from Full Sail University. All right, so these are the 3 people that we're going to be having on tonight, that we're going to be talking about crisis in the Black family. So one of the things, my goal is to actually make sure that we understand that there's definitely a crisis. We know that there is a crisis. We want to make sure that we offer resolution. And the things that we're going to be talking about tonight is the decline in the Black family, the high rise of divorce in the Black family, the lack of Black businesses in the Black community, the incarnation of our Black men and also the wealth or the lack thereof of wealth, and also the type of legacy that we want to make sure that we're actually leaving and that we're trying to preserve from our ancestors, that we can actually leave for the next generation. So those are some things that we're going to be covering. I do want to give some statistics before we actually I give floor to you all to begin to talk, but I do want to give some statistics so we can actually talk about this. One thing that I began to look up, I actually saw, and this is the census for the U.S. Census of 2023. It says, again, listen to this. This is a status for Black marital status. This is a Black marital status. It said Black women are 27% are married, 3% are separated, 13% is divorced, 8% are widowed, and 49% will never be married. That's a very high statistic. The Black man, 34% is married, 3% separated, 10% divorced, 2% widowed, and 51% will never be married. In the marriage by race, now this is marriage by race for the blacks. 31% married, 3% separated, 12% divorced, 5% widowed, 50% will never be married. In the Hispanic community, 43% married, 3% divorced, 3% separated, 8% divorced, 3% widowed, and 43% will never get married. That's the Hispanic community. In the white community, 53% married, 1% separated, 11% divorced, 6% widowed, 23% never to get married. In the Asian community, 59% married, 1% separated, 5% divorced, 4% widowed, and 31%, actually 21% never to get married. So we can actually see, just looking at these statistics, again, the decline, how that blacks are the number one. They're on the bottom list, for divorce, and they're on the bottom list as far as being able to get married, being able to stay in a marriage. So those are things that we need to take notice of within the Black community. We need to talk about that, about why is there such a declining factor within the Black community as it relates to marriage, as it relates to wealth, because we do know that whenever we do have separation and we're not together as one, then the wealth transfer is very, very minute, because you're operating on one income. So those are things that we need to take into consideration. So I want to start with the question, and then I'll let y'all have the floor. But I want to start with the question: why is there a decline within the Black America? Why is there such a progressive decline within the Black family, within the Black community as a whole? And how do we begin to actually come out of that? So I'll let y'all have the floor and talk about those things and anything else that you want to bring about. Whoever wants to go first.
So
Abdul,
I'm assuming all of the brothers. I heard Brother Winfred and Brother Majesty. We're all married men. So it becomes almost difficult to tell people why they not married, right? Because we obviously know the secret. But I think one of the biggest things we have to look at, and for all intents and purposes, I'll kind of put on my political hat here for a second. All we have to do is go back and look at what happened over the last 40 years with the institution of the welfare state, whether they meant to do it, whether it was on purpose, whether it was nefarious to break the family up or not. I'm not going to get into that. What I'm going to say is a bunch of decisions were made that have had a negative impact. Be that the absence of the male from the household in order for the female to get resources, food, clothing, shelter, and money. When we look at the advent of how certain particular political parties have utilized women's liberation movements and feminism as a means of liberation for women, that has had undoubtedly a negative impact. And then you also look at the general Western society's shift away from a religious worldview. When you look at how far away we've gotten from the framers of this Constitution said only a godly people will deserve this nation. So when you look at how far away we've actually gotten from that and our reliance on government, I think it's a no-brainer that you see a decline in the marriage rate.
Okay, Winfred, Jari,
Uncle
y'all
Winfrey.
want to?
Process. Uncle Winfrey, you can go.
All right. Greetings to everyone, and I think it's a number of things, and I would say from a biblical point of view, um, as you look at the African American family, the crisis that we face stems from historical injustice, systemic inequalities, contemporary social and economical challenges. These crises have impacted us, the family structure, our economic stability, our education, health, and overall well-being. Just from a kingdom standpoint, I believe the foundation of the family is a kingdom um, perspective that we must have. And so I believe that our nation, whether Republican or Democrat, have they don't follow those principles, neither one of them, or independent. I believe we've gotten away from a kingdom perspective of living. And so the family structure and father absence in the home, um, economic inequality or unemployment impacts at least the families I see and I come into contact, educational disparities that are there in our community, even crime, violence, or community instability. And, my brother there mentioned some things that factor into that. Health disparities and mental health challenges. These things are real in our community, along with the breakdown of morals and that spiritual foundation that my brother put out there. And just systemic racism and legal barriers that exist today and are real. And that has been going on in this nation from inception. I'm not one of those that believe that the founding fathers had a Christian principle in mind. I'm one of those that believe, they believed in God, but in terms of building a nation, what it was built on, from the Native American to the African that was brought here, there was nothing Christian about that. And so you can draw up any paperwork you want and try to make it mean that, but it don't. And so that's just a little bit where I stand on what has impacted our families.
I agree with everything everyone has said. I'm not big. I used to be big on politics. I'm not big on politics anymore. But the only thing that I do understand about what's impacting Black families is, I mean, going when you take it, to the scriptures, it goes all the way back to evil. It goes all the way back to darkness. It goes all the way back to the adversary. It goes all the way back to everything that tries to get towards destruction of men and destruction of women as individuals. It's beyond just a Black thing. It's about people as a whole. But I believe when you look at people who are, this color, we're affected probably a little differently or a lot more because we really don't we're just now starting to understand who we actually serve, right? You have people that are kind of trying to serve the idea of a god that they think they understand, and you have people that are serving a god that they are hoping they understand, and you have people that are serving the right god, but you have people this color that are going in different places and serving in different ways. And if you don't know who you're serving, then you really don't have a strong foundation or direction to go in. And I believe that spills into other things. It spills into how we allow for ourselves to be governed. That's what a government is. We allow ourselves to be governed by an organization and by an institution. And we just fall into it. And we teach children to, fall into it and to, do this and to do that and to be a part of the system. Nobody's teaching children to not be a part of the system and look outside of the system. We grow up in the matrix, and sometimes we don't learn until it's too late that we shouldn't have been there in the first place. Most people talk about, like, say, for instance, when you look at the word man, when you look at the word male, right? You look at the word male. I was talking to my wife about this yesterday. You look at the word male, or I think it's the word man. Yeah, it's the word. It's either the word man or the word male. But one of those words mean a being that's subject to death. I believe it's man. Man means a being that's subject to death. That's what it means. It's either man or it's either man or it's male. But when we don't really look at ourselves and we don't really understand how much power has actually been given to us and how much limitation has been given to us, we start to actually, unfortunately, we start to serve ourselves in many different ways. You
Mm-hmm.
know, one of the things that I realized when I looked at America is I don't like the way that it, is how it's opposed to black men, how it's opposed to black women, or just people in general. I don't believe that this is a nation that's one. I don't believe that this is a nation that's under the right God. I don't believe that this is a nation that is undivisible. It is very much divisible. There's no liberty, there's no justice for all, and when you look at a God that this country does serve, it's not the God that created everything, because you can't serve a God and then destroy people and take their land in the process. That God does not, he doesn't honor that. He's not proud of that. But the God that this country does seem to serve, I believe his name is called pathos, which is emotions. America is very emotional. Everyone does things off of emotions. Every decision is made off of emotions. And I believe you can see that because everything starts from the head and then it trickles down. And when you look at who is supposed to be at the head of everything with this country, it's a very emotional person. So I believe it's like many different layers to it. But I believe when we kind of don't understand how much power we have and how unstable we can be and what all goes into that, we allow ourselves to be governed in many different directions, whether it's through education, politics, socioeconomics, religion,
Mm-hmm.
or even relationships.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it.
That's great. I just want to kind of, I don't have anything to write with, so I'm holding, stuff in my hand. And again, I'm trying to keep my composure because this is great information that I wish we were live and, people could really be hearing and responding to this. But so this is new for me. So I'm learning how to transition and go with the flow. So one of the things, Jari, I just want to kind of capitalize on what you had actually said as it relates to you believe that this is not a nation that is for all, and how we are an emotional nation. And I do believe that. So how do we? I think this is one thing that I'm trying to recall what you had said earlier that I really wanted to capitalize on a little bit. I think you were talking about how, we have to make sure that we and I'm trying to, maybe you'll bring it back if I kind of say something that would kind of help spark what you said. I think you were saying something about how we raise our kids, and we have to get out of trying to allow government or trying to allow the system to actually dictate to us how we should actually raise our family, or how we should actually go about doing life as a whole, when it relates to the way that we live, the way that we interact with people, the way that we do business, or the way that we do education, the way that we do government. Do you remember that, what you actually said about that?
I do. I don't remember verbatim, but just to kind of, I guess, summarize it or to further elaborate, when we don't understand who we actually serve, when we're just now like when you look in the scriptures and it says, train up a child in the way they should go and they'll never depart from it. It that's true. That's what you should do. But the unfortunate part is that a lot of children grow up to become parents who have children and they haven't even solidified the way that they should go. They're still learning. And so they're training up a child hoping that they're going in the right direction. And the parents are still trying to figure out what's the right direction for them. And so that vulnerability allows for darkness and evil to kind of interfere with their lives, and then it spills into the lives of the children. And so then you end up allowing for your children to be plugged into the matrix or a system such as education, politics, or socioeconomics, and they're not equipped to handle anything. They're equipped to be a product of the system. They're equipped to be a product and the outcome of what it has become a repetitive cycle for people this color. Because it's one thing to not know who you serve and then you actually don't care and you do well according to society standards. And it's one thing to actually want to serve the right God and you don't really understand, and then everything just goes downhill. You know, a person can do a lot of bad things, and it seems like they have it all together. A person can want to do a lot of right things, but they may not actually understand where all of that stuff needs to be put in place. You can want to serve people, you can want to feed people, but if you're trying to do it in all the wrong places, your life is not going to get any better. Um, so that's basically what I'm saying. With being a former teacher with kindergarten, middle school, and high school, seeing all three different, types of like the evolution of students in the grade system. Being a teacher, it is horrible. I know some people say we need more teachers, more men, who are this color who are teachers, and there are a lot of men who are able to do that. I'm not one of them because
I
I
feel
don't
you.
like politics. I don't like politics, and I don't like the system. I don't like the fact that it's able to encourage a type of curriculum and a type of teaching that isn't helping anyone get closer to Adonai, to the Most High. It's not. And so when parents don't really understand their role, when they really don't understand their direction, they end up making their life their life worse and their children's life worse, and it creates a legacy of perpetual and habitual habits that lead to more vulnerability, that allows for darkness and evil to kind of interfere with them, their bloodline. And before you know it, you just have a whole family that's just has a history for being in poverty, or you have a whole family that has a history for having anger management issues, or for making bad decisions, or for having children out of wedlock, or for just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. It creates a perpetual cycle. So I mean, when you talk about a crisis and preserving legacy, I believe you have to kind of understand, how can a legacy start, and how can a legacy be maintained, and how can a legacy end. I believe you have to attack the issue from those three directions, because the enemy knows. That's why he's doing it, but we don't know, or most of us don't know, which is why we don't succeed at it. But that's why the enemy kind of has a leg up in a battle that's already supposed to be won, but everybody else is kind of acting and going about things as if it's not won. Like you already got the cheat code to win the battle, but you're going about things outside of the blueprint, so it's getting worse. If you don't attack it from the way that the legacy is already shown that it works, you're trying to create a legacy that evil says he wants you to have, so that way it leads you further away from where you're supposed to be.
If I might
That's what
jump
I
in
was saying.
on this, one of the things that I think, and we all may be in agreement on this, but for the listeners, one of the problems that I think we're facing collectively is we have what I call out of order syndrome. Out of order meaning
Wow.
God ordained an order, meaning first line of defense to help an individual succeed is the family unit. And when the
Right.
family unit can't help that individual get it together, the church is supposed to step in and help that family to help that individual. And when the church couldn't help that family, help that individual, that's when the community helps the church help that family, help that individual. And then when nothing else works and all else fails, that's when the government is supposed to step in and offer a support. But we've gotten so out of order. Now it's the individual can't self-regulate, government. That's the first line of defense. Let's medicate him. Let's give him some ADD meds. Let's put him in a facility. We skipped all of these other steps. And I think one of the issues, and I agree wholeheartedly, is that we're out of order. But, let's talk solutions. One of the biggest things that parents can do, and I did this with children that went to the public schools, that experienced racism, that experienced, negativity in the public schools. We didn't send our children to school with the intention of them educating our children. We sent them in there to supplement the education we provided at home.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, if you're a parent of young children, early childhood, pre-elementary school children, you're supposed to teach them to read at home first. You're supposed to start like we did in our household. We started with, in the beginning, God, you learned how to read from that. And so by the time we sent you into the elementary school, by the time you got to the middle school level, your personality wasn't able to be changed or influenced by the things we saw outside of there. One other thing, if I might add to this, I think one of the biggest problems is that as a family structure, we have a tendency, and in this country, we have a tendency to want to keep up with the Joneses and look at what everybody else got going on instead of focusing inward and being thankful for what you do have. I for one, my mom was 13 when she had my twin brother and I. She was 11 when she had my older sister. My dad is 14 years older than her. As somebody that grew up absolutely poor in the social service system, separated from my identical twin for the majority of my life, I know firsthand what it's like to come from a broken family. And I had to learn how to not look at what everybody else had, not look at what everybody else had going on, and focus on what was going to be best for my family and to do the things that I don't think there's a day in my son and my daughter's life they haven't seen me, except for when I'm like out of town working. So I think we've got, as men, and this might ruffle a few feathers if y'all watching this might ruffle a few feathers. The problem is, like Tupac said, anybody can make a baby. Anybody could do that. You know, you can't, anybody could have an orgasm and create that. That's easy. The hard part is manning up. And what we've been told, and I know the brother said he doesn't do politics, but let's be honest, there's a group of people that want us to believe God created more than men and women. There's a group of people that want us to believe it's okay to use abortion as a means of birth control. There's a group of people that want us to believe by removing God from their political platform that this is a secular country, when in reality, this is a Christian nation. This was founded to be such. Now, we could have maybe a political or social political dialogue, you know, an intellectual exercise on how that works out, but you do not have the level of freedom that we have here anywhere in the world. I always tell people, if you find a freer, more accessible, opportunity providing country, a plane ticket ain't that expensive. But the fact of the matter is, as men, and I'll just go back to this before I end, as men, I think a huge impetus relies on us being absent and not, like the brother said, teaching our children the way we should go. I owned a towing business for a couple of years, Brother Winfred, and I would go out on the rainiest, coldest, wettest days so that my drivers would see me as the company owner doing the things that I asked them to do. Right. Before I sold my company, I went up to University area, Charlotte, flat tire call. I see these 5, 6 big old college age, black and white, so mixed group of people. And these brothers were standing around this Ford Bronco, puzzled about how to change the tire. I guarantee you, none of them had a daddy at home. Because when I said, I'm not finna change this tire with all y'all young people, you gonna learn today. You go get that jack, you grab that four-way, we gonna learn today. So I think and not only within our own families, but men like us who are married and in relationships have to take on responsibility for the ones that are around us. So I'll end there, but I think I agree with a lot what the brother said, but I also want to add that the impetus is recognizing that we have to. It's a term called enculturation versus acculturation. And we have to get back to enculturation. We have to get back to first culture learning. And like when I hear people say black community, I'm like, what black community? Most of the people I know don't even know who their neighbors are left and right, won't even go borrow a cup of sugar. So, you know, but I digress.
Let me hear your brother Winfred.
Yeah, I appreciate this dialogue right here. I mean, this is what we need, and I appreciate the platform and what the brothers have put before us. Just one statistic, and you're all hitting on it, but approximately 64% of African-American children live in a single-parent home right now. 64%. And this home is often led by the mother. So that's one thing. So you see the breakdown of the family structure. Not that the woman can't take care of the family, but the family wasn't designed to be like that. And so you have weakness. So a fatherless family, it messes up the young boy's identity of himself and what that means. And so you're looking somewhere else to find out who you are. You're looking on TV, you look at the movie, you're looking at your neighbor, you're looking at the games, you're looking at everything else, but you don't have a real live person there for that. So we see that in our in our communities. We see that whether you go to the schools or whatever. And so, as he said about the churches, one of the things that should be there is helping to restore biblical manhood. Understand what a man is, because there are several definitions out there on the street of what a man is, and even religious people have that definition. As long as you provide a home, some food, or protect you, those are basic things. But there's more to manhood than that, and understanding who you are. You can have those things and never know who you really are. And so mentorship in terms of being in place. Like you see, like you talk about them 5 guys out there, you can tell real quick a man who has a man in his life. And so I'm speaking of churches right now. What do we do with that? Do we just let those single parents? In most churches, the majority of their membership are female. And so you come in there, most females are there in the churches. And so they have children a lot of times, because 64% of the families are single parent. So how do you provide for those? How do you provide mentorship? How do you teach them? How do you help them get prepared for college? How do you help them know those things? They're just like you could have a class on this is how you change a tire. This is how you check your oil. This is how you change your windshield wipers. There's some fundamental things. You don't have to go out and get no money from no government agency to do these things. You don't have to build a program. You just help build a life. Teach them those simple things about being there, that your word is important. When you tell them something, you follow through with that. They don't have to guess and wonder, but you follow through with it. And so as I look at some of these things on the family, what my brother said, the family structure and the father absence is big. And I say some of those things, now I'm not coming down on them. I'm saying some of those things, a person who doesn't have that are raised to continue to do that, it's going to be a pattern. Mm-hmm. And many of our families are following that pattern. Children having children who don't have fathers in their life, having children who don't have fathers in their lives. It happens. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but it happens. And so how do we break that cycle? Because all these things add to the crisis in the Black community. And so when it comes to educating them, when it comes to teaching them how about economics in the family, we're just trying to get our hustle. We're just trying to survive. We're just trying to make it. Like my brother said, if you were raised by a single mom young and in poverty, you just want something to eat. You just want to make it. And so when you're raised in that mentality, a lot of times that sticks with you. It can be used for good or it can be used for bad. And so how do you train them up in the way that they should go? And we just want to add water and say, go on to this is what you should do. This is how you should be a man in different things. I remember having this conversation with my daughter, the guy she dated, if I say you should be home at this time and I tell him you need to have my daughter home at this time, and my daughter was late coming home at that time, I didn't talk to her. I went to him because we had this agreement, but anyway, I'm not going to put it all out there because she'll be mad at me. But anyway, long story short is, he didn't have, some didn't have fathers in their life. I said, that's why I'm here, because I want him to know how a man acts. How a man treats a woman, how he's gonna treat my daughter, anyway. And so let me calm down. Back to this. Back to these things. Biblical understanding. I think we need to restore what a man is from a biblical standpoint. My brother said society got all types of definitions of what a man is, what a woman is, and that's society. That's dysfunctional. It won't work. It can't work, but if we teach what a family is about, what is a male, what is a female, what's a family unit, what are responsibilities that come with that? That's how you grow the individual, grow the family, and grow the community. And that's important in building. So there are a lot of other things that I see here in terms of that plague us right now. When you're in those situations, you can talk about all these things, give all these theories about these things, quote all these scriptures. But how do you help me?
Right.
And that's real quick. You got to get down to.
If you don't
Yeah.
mind me jumping
Go
in,
ahead.
brother
Jump
Winfrey,
on in.
I want
Jump
to,
on in.
and I know the brother Majesty might get a kick out of what I'm about to say. I could tell we have very similar wavelengths on this. But you mentioned something, brother Winfrey, that I think is important for people to catch because it might have flew by y'all. He said the word pattern. So if you look up the etymology, not the definition, definitions are subjective. I could define whatever I want to define, how I want to define it. But the etymology of a word, it's the history and of its origin and its usage over time is what you want to focus on. When you look at the word father, it comes from the Latin word for pattern, for pater, where you get the word pattern. When you look at the word mother, it comes from the word matrix, where you get your matter. That's where we get the word matter from.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about why we see this, especially among young men and this behavior, it's because they're the pattern that they're seeing from their father, from their pater, from their physical side. That's what you're reproducing.
Yes, sir.
And unfortunately, this and this is no disrespect to the sisters. It's just the way I believe God designed this. There's a balance between logic and emotion, right? And when you have one side that is heavier than the other, and there's no balance for a child, he or she is gonna act out. When a little girl has no father in her life, she seeks to go get the physical reaction because that pattern of good healthy things wasn't there from her father. When a little boy's dad isn't there, he takes on the emotions of the mother. And a lot of times what we're seeing is young men who are emotionally castrated because this female is angry at this man. And it's I think the solution is simple. The solution now, I'm gonna again, I look at things from a perspective of what can we do in the collective, because politics to me isn't always just about the people in the White House, the people in the governor's mansion. It's also about the people at the city hall, the local community and how they govern. You know, we govern ourselves. Like I have a block association. That's a government. We govern our block. You're not going to come over here acting just not. But I think what has to happen is we've got to get to a position within our society and our culture of building up neighborliness again and being willing. I had with my son, who is 21 now, when he went to go play for the soccer for the PAL here in Charlotte, I was honored to have somebody like a Coach Rory mentoring my son. I was honored that my son would go to him and ask him questions. I wasn't offended. Why are you talking to my son like that? No. That brother, he had a badge and a gun. He's a different level of authority that I'm honored that my son respects. So I think we have to collectively, as people, recognize that we're reproducing some terrible patterns. But the fix for that, I'm not saying it's simple. But you're right, we get back to godly principles, but we also have to go knock on the next door neighbor's door. Hey, my name is Ali. I live next door to you now. Lee and Drea, my son, my wife's name is Tasha. We're the family next door. And we got to get back. I think we get back to that, we'll get back to a lot of solving these problems.
No, I definitely agree. I agree with everyone. So yeah, I mean, to add to what everyone's saying, and in case other people like aren't catching it, like you have to focus on preserving identity. And for the man, a lot of men don't know their identity. So the man needs to learn and understand the importance of preserving identity. And it's not the fact that like, oh, how can you preserve something that you don't know exists? It exists. You just don't know how to look for it. Men are very visual. We're very visual. That's why when it comes, like one of the things when I first told my wife when we first met, I said, all right, I said, I have a looking problem. I have a gazing problem. When it comes to other, I said, I'm working on it. But now that I've gotten older, it's not a thing. I mean, I have my moments, but it's not a thing. But I say that to say that also when it comes to men, a lot of times whenever we see something, like say if you're raised by a woman, if you're raised by a woman, the woman, she can raise a man, but she can't reflect a man. Men look at stuff and then we emulate it, especially at a young age. You raised by a woman, you're going to gain certain things from her, but she can't reflect what you have to become. And that's what a father is supposed to do. A father is supposed to be a reflection of what the son is supposed to become or supposed to surpass. And if a man does not have anything to aim for, he's going to try to find it. And that's what happens a lot of times.
Mhm.
I mean, so yeah, it goes to everything that everyone is saying. But if you want to, like, if people want to understand how can I establish a legacy or this, that, and the third, if you have the opportunity to do it in a family dynamic, it starts with the man. If a wife has a husband and she's like, well, I want my husband now to, be able to have a legacy for our family, learn how to better support your husband, even if he doesn't know how to support himself. If he doesn't know how to support the vision that he's been given, pray and ask, pray and ask Adonai, how can I support my husband with what it is you've destined and created for him to do, even when he doesn't see it? Because a lot of times, men, we see the vision, we just don't know how to execute it. And a lot of times we need help with that. And sometimes men don't know how to ask for help. So
Good.
in the midst of still trying to lead a family, we're also still trying to further understand our identity. So while we're still trying to lead a wife or lead children or lead community and people we're attached to, we still are trying to discover our identity. If we
Yep.
didn't have a father figure there, and if we had other factors that played a dynamic into why we had problems trying to find our identity, we're still going to be leading you trying to find our identity in the process. And that creates tension. It creates problems because you're expecting for a man to respond a certain type of way. You're expecting for him to have a certain type of composure. You're expecting for him to have a certain type of dynamic to him when most men don't. There's a standard for men that men are still trying to reach because most men didn't come from a family where a standard exists. It exists in the scriptures, but it don't exist here, like in the family itself. And so preserving the man also looks like just be a little easy, be a little more empathetic and sympathetic when it comes to being a man. Women have it hard, I get that. Women have it very hard, but the struggle of man and woman are completely different. You can't compare the two. They exist in their own space, and then they also exist together in their own space. It's a comparison and contrast, but it's best never to compare it because it starts arguments. But you have to be able to learn. It does.
You
It
done
starts
gone there, boy.
it starts arguments. But you have to learn to be sympathetic and empathetic towards a man, especially if a man didn't have a strong family dynamic or a father figure, because he's trying to love you while still trying to understand who he is in the process. That's difficult. It's like trying to write a song, and you hear the melody, you understand the rhythm, you understand how it's supposed to be composed and how you want it to be produced, but you don't know the words that go to it. You cannot have a song that's meant to contain lyrics and you have everything else and it has no words. It's not going to be finished. It's always going to be something that flows well and something that doesn't flow well. It's an ebb and flow. So when it comes to preserving a legacy, it starts with learning how to preserve men, and men have to be willing to preserve each other, because a lot of times men are always caught up in the struggle of trying to preserve and maintain whatever they work so hard to get, that they just miss the next brother that actually needs help, the next brother that's actually about to jump off a ledge, the next brother that probably needs a meal, or the brother that probably has too much pride to where he needs to ask for help, but he don't know how to. Sometimes we have to be father figures to people that don't know that they actually need a father. And I believe that's a difficult part.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
gonna ask the pastor real quick. Do you know what the first thing after God gave Adam life? What's the first thing God gave Adam?
A job.
A job. Okay, a job. And I say that to say, when we talk about preserving legacy, I talk about this a lot with my kids. Like, not everybody's meant to be the CEO of a company. Not
Right.
everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur. It's not in the cards for everybody. But for men, the best thing that we can do, if you can't help them, fish, you can give them a job. You can give them something to do. And I think we've got to get back to that now. This whole stereotype, this is in the context of preserving a legacy and leaving a legacy. Everything is owned by families. Walmart is the Waltons family, right? you look at right now, the biggest entertainment companies in the world are run by families. The Disney family. You look at the Rothsteins that run Paramount, and BET is owned by white Jewish people. Just have to be mad at me. That's who owns it. But it's families that have. But the Rockefellers, well, you know, everybody talks about the Fords and the Rock. All of these stuff is families. And I think one of the things that good, bad, or worse, as a result of the civil rights movement, there's an element of folks that said, look, we made it. I got my Cadillac. I got my crib. I can live over there with the white folk. I'm good now. And I, for one, I didn't do this with my kids, and I never would, but we got this thing. It's like, you 18, you getting out of my house. No. That's not legacy. That's not how you create a legacy. I have white counterparts whose children go to college, come back home, stay at home to save their money, and then they go a half an acre behind the house and build their house right there. They kids then go a half an acre that way and build their house on that same 40-acre plot. And there's this continuation of legacy by creating a closeness, a true familial experience. And if you look at the word family, you get the word familiar. We talk about, like, I have, and I'm guilty of this in my own family. I have cousins, I don't know them. I have no emotional attachment because I didn't grow up with them. I don't know them. I'm not familiar with them. But I think we've got to get back to this. In order to leave a legacy, we have to be familiar with each other. We have to be, especially within our own families, become familiar with the idea of, you know, I don't need to walk around the house naked. I don't have to do that. I mean, my son and my daughter, 23, like I've heard people say that. You got to get out of my house. I want to walk around my house naked. Like, stay here, save your money. You know, one thing you touched on, Brother Winfred, and I'm gonna shut up. I wholeheartedly understand where that situation comes from when you talk about your daughter and, you know, the young man that's dating her. Unfortunately, I'm in a situation where I have a really nice young man that's been with my daughter since middle school. Like, they started out as friends, and it's been a long-term relationship. And we've gotten very familiar with him to the point where we treat him like family. Mm-hmm. And I think we've got to learn how it's not just dating to be with somebody, it's dating to bring them into the family, to meld what they internal family culture is. And we joked about this. I'm like, so what are we doing? Like an Asian, Black, Hispanic wedding thing? Like, what are we doing? Is this stir-fried tacos and meatloaf? Like, what are we doing if y'all get married? Like, you know, I say it jokingly, but it's the idea that we have to, in order to be family, in order to the start of a legacy starts with being familiar with your children. It's not in a rush to kick them out into the world. I can't stand when I hear people in our community say that you turn 18, you getting out my house, you're throwing somebody whose brain ain't all the way developed into the world. Man, our brains don't fully develop until we 21, 22. You know, you can't. I just don't think that's the approach. If we're going to talk about leaving a legacy, it has to start with the familiarity of being comfortable with our adult children when they become adults, setting the expectation that home is wherever we're at together. That could be a 1-bedroom shack. That could be a 3-bedroom apartment. That could be a 500,000 square foot mansion in Ballantyne. But the fact of the matter is, we have that. I think that legacy starts with family. And in the context of family, I mean the familiarity of being, you know, of this broken family narrative that I see portrayed in the movies and the film. Last thing, I swear to, have y'all ever gone in Walmart and looked at the Black book section? It's drama. It is nothing but the rose from the thorns, how I left my man. It's the most gutter, ridiculous, unhelpful. It's nothing positive. And it's nothing that I know. I'm reading all of these titles, and I say that to say we're given a bunch of things that don't make us more familiar with each other. We're given a bunch of things that push us away from each other. And I think the church has to play a role in bringing, whether that's couples counseling, whether that's married couples nights, whether that's, if somebody comes to you as a pastor and says, I want to get married, pulling a married couple that been together for 75 years together. I had before I proposed to my wife at church, and before I asked this old dude, I said, what's the secret of y'all been together 60 years. What's the secret? He said, it ain't that serious. Unless somebody's bleeding, and if they ain't bleeding, ain't been in an accident, lost a limb, it ain't that. I'm like, gotcha. I had to get rid of the anger I had over little nothing issues. Like, come on, I don't even know what color my living room is. Whatever makes her happy, that's what color the living room is, I guess. Like, I don't care. But I'll stop there and just say it's the legacy starts with the familiarity of being familiar with your family and being willing to really know who your family is.
Yeah. What you just said made me think of something. One thing that I do hear people say a lot is like happy wife, happy life. And I totally disagree with that, because your wife can be happy and then you're miserable, and then she's like, it's not a thing. Like happy spouse, happy house, but then at the same time, happiness is fleeting. It's fleeting. Like you can't expect to be married and to consistently be happy. That doesn't exist. It doesn't exist at all. And I think when it comes to also, like, I guess, Black families, they have to understand that too. Like, you have to lower your expectations for how you think a family dynamic and a marriage is supposed to work. You're not always going to be happy, and it's not about a wife always being happy. Sometimes she gonna have to learn to be upset, and to just listen, and to be okay, and to work through it, and to follow the lead. And then the husband has to be able to understand how to better lead, because sometimes we lead from a place of like being irrational. So I mean, it's a give and a take in that aspect. And then also, I feel like people, with this color, they have to lower their expectations for how they want a family to look. A lot of times they set an expectation for, well, our family does this. And it's really that way because when you grew up, your family didn't do that. So then when you got older and you had the opportunity to create a certain type of tradition, you set the tone and said, our family does this. Then, like, I'm this person. Then when a person comes along, they like, no, but we not doing this. It takes a while for people to get adjusted, like, because you can't set an expectation for how family's supposed to look. The expectation is already set in the scriptures, but people keep serving their own emotions, that pathos. They've created a God for themselves in different ways. Family can be a God. You just don't realize it, but having a certain type of family dynamic, that can be a God. Your emotions can be a God. And if you're not realizing that, you're asking everybody else to serve that God that you really don't understand you're serving. You're asking everybody else to serve that God with you. And when people don't want to do it, you upset. Now they're not dependable. Now they don't want to come around, or how they are. And it's really not them, it's you. No, it's how you are. You are that way. People just don't want to deal with it. And the way to break that is lower your expectation. And then you have to check yourself, because one of the things that Mr. Abdul said is, like, with family, you don't have to be familiar, but family is also about unity. But a lot of people can't be united if they're not united within themselves. If the kingdom of God is within, which it is, and everybody ain't in it, and then you have to it has to be in you, and then you got to simultaneously be in it. It's the same thing with being united. You got to be united in yourself before you can be united with other people. That it doesn't work in an opposite way or in the opposite fashion. Now, I don't have any children. I'm only 32, so I still have a lot to learn, but that's what I've learned thus far.
We hear you.
So,
we hear you. We hear you, player. We hear you. I'm just gonna say we hear you. I'll just say this. I appreciate all the things put on the table. In terms of expectation, nephew, if you let the world set those, you'll be going up and down all over the place. That's like my brother Adu said, like, keep up with the Joneses. But in terms of a kingdom vision for your family, when I say that, people think about church. I'm not talking about church. I'm talking about kingdom. And understand that the king sets the vision for the kingdom. Now, how do I allow that to work? I mean, as you look at Genesis, the beginning, in terms of create, he said, "Let us make man in our image," and then he lays out some things about man, his vision, and with his empowerment. Now, that's not world vision. That's not a worldview that we have today. And so, when he gets into, as my brother asked, what's that first question? And this is something that with our men, young men, whoever, we call it divine craftsmanship or workmanship, understanding who you are through who God says you are, your creator. And so with that, if you allow him to set your expectations, and that sounds kind of like up in the sky, but he says, you are my workmanship, created in Christ Jesus. And when you look at the word workmanship, that word goes deeper in terms of he's saying you are my masterpiece. There's no one like you. I've empowered you to do things and be who I call you to be, but you gotta let that work out. But sometimes we're trying to be what everybody else wants us to be. I don't care whether it's a wife, a husband, church, family members, in-laws, outlaws, whatever you would call it, your job. You got all these things trying to set who you are, and you're running around in circles. And that's what in a marriage, in a family, and on a job, these things can mess you up. So I don't even have time to go through it, but I just would say, if you don't know who that is and you marry somebody who don't know what that is, come on, and you have children, what do you think they're going to know?
Yeah.
You got a home that way, and then you're going to church and nobody knows. We just praising the Lord. We just trying to get this program, this ministry or whatever, and, build this and build that. Everything's been built, but the individual and the family. The church statistics in terms of divorce is the same with people outside the church. But we supposed to have an upper edge, in terms of adultery. You look at the things across the board, it's the same. That tells me something is wrong there. It's not kingdom oriented. And so, as my nephew said, there can be problems. If you think you marry, I don't care how much you love that person when you marry. If you think life's just gonna be perfect and y'all gonna live happily ever after, you still in elementary school reading those books, because it's not gonna work out that way. It's gonna be friction. It's the differences. You're gonna have to work through them. You got to know how to work through them. You have to know how to persevere. You're gonna have to learn how to forgive. You're gonna have to learn how to bring healing in pain to the very one who hurt you. How do I do that? And so it's a lot of dynamics there, but I know that's not what we're talking about, but y'all got off on some good stuff. And, I'm gonna walk it back to crisis in the Black family, but I do believe the family structure in the absence of the father is definitely one. But I wanted to say something because we talked about in terms of the economic aspects of things. With the Black family, the median net worth of Black households in our nation is less than 15% of a white household. This is a reality of where we live. Now, it's not by accident. There are disappropriated jobs in the Black community. General wealth accumulation is hindered by historical, once again, and systematic barriers. They are there. It's been there. In terms of lack of generational wealth, lack of home ownership, and with that, putting us on, as my brother been saying, in terms of financial dependence, we've been looking, we've been taught to depend on somebody else to build our general wealth. And so we get that job. Oh, we got this job, we happy, but that job taken away from you, give to somebody else, what you do then, And so there are things that we haven't been taught. But as my brother Abdul pointed out, there are other folks who are teaching their families that, been teaching their families that. Black unemployment remains twice as high as white unemployment. There's racial biases in hiring and limited access. Now, there's some people have jobs, but there's limited access for many African Americans in high-paying jobs. In terms of the struggle, we have struggles. We got to go to the same stores. We have to buy the same gas, the same food. But we saw this during the pandemic. We saw when that hit, it impacted everybody. But who had to go out there and work? Who lost so much during that time? Poverty increased during that time. There became a greater gap between the wealthy and the poor. during that time, and we're still recovering. People are still recovering. They're working 1, 2, 3 jobs trying to make it. And I think, as we look at some of these things, there's some things we have to teach. We have to look at how we come alongside of. And have any of you seen the movie, The Forge?
Yeah. Well, he's mentoring
Twice.
the young brother. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Powerful movie. And he's not depending on the church to do it. These are some things that we, like I said, we could talk about what should be done, but sometimes for us males, whether we had a father in the house or not, we can be some prideful people because we fall into that system think we can pull our own self up by the bootstraps. We don't need nobody. We could do it. But being humble enough to be accountable to another man, whether younger or older, being willing to listen and to learn from people who've gone through things. They're not perfect, but they've been through some things. So you can learn from them, but also at the same time, knowing that some of these younger brothers, man, they're 2 or 3 steps ahead of us in things that we didn't know, to be able to learn from them as well. And so we got, in terms of with the father in the family or not, there are some things that we as men need to do because we need each other. We've been matched against each other for years. And when you look at, I think we talked about, you said about your family, what you're becoming, but you look at the Asian family, you look at the Hispanic family, you look at the Black, all these communities, look how they work together and we work against each other. Look at it.
Yeah.
How they willing to help with extended family. And we like, nah, bro, you on your own. You can go down.
Bro, that's why I said we got to get back to that first what's called first culture learning and creating that internal first culture. You said something about economics, and real quick, Sister Stephanie, I want to throw something out there because I've done a lot of work in North Carolina on this. I'm really proud. One of the biggest issues is financial literacy, and as of right now in North Carolina, in order to graduate high school, you have to take a class in financial literacy. I don't think that's far enough. I think there's a lot more that could be done. But I think that what the other side to this, when COVID hit, I, as an operations director and political director, we organized something called the COVID Economic Recovery Task Force for Minority Businesses. We went and got the SBA. We went and had, it was a Black guy at the time, Dr. Thomas Stith, who was the head of the SBA in North Carolina. We had over 400 North Carolina Black-owned, male and female Black-owned businesses come through this Resources for Recovery workshop. We found out some very interesting things doing that. Almost 90% of the Black-owned businesses in North Carolina are what you call micro businesses. They do less than $250,000 a year in revenue. That's not to do with profit. They don't do a lot in revenue. So we're talking about not a lot of money cycling through these businesses. The other thing was it was almost 64% of the female-owned businesses that came through our Resources for Recovery workshop were not registered with an EIN number. They were using their own social security number. They really had no idea how to set themselves up as a business. So when all of this COVID money was coming down, no wonder we didn't have access to it, because we weren't set up properly. It was almost 46% of male-owned limited liability companies, LLCs, were not all the way set up properly. They had an EIN, but there was no board structure. There was no accountability. They hadn't filed taxes in 5 years. Just all kind of things that were out of whack for our businesses. And to your point about that, it's got to be a each one teach one, each one bring people up mentality. One of the biggest things that we saw during COVID was when we were getting people connected, we were connecting them to Black financial advisors, to Black accountants, and saying, hey, go see this sister so you can get your EIN set up so that you can take advantage of these programs. And we weren't charging anything for it. And it was bipartisan. We had Democrats and Republicans on this COVID Economic Recovery Task Force. So I think one of the big takeaways from that was we were able to get a $3.5 million carve out through North Carolina, through Golden Leaf, to specifically go to minority-owned businesses. Now, that didn't make the papers. It's not big, sexy news and all of that. But the fact of the matter is, it opened my eyes so much as to how little we were teaching each other. For those of us who go up and succeed and do well, we're not reaching back.
That's it.
Go get our folks and say, hey, bro, look, I run a towing company. I know you got your towing company over there. Instead of competing with you, I'm gonna say, let's get together. All of these tow truck companies, Black-owned tow truck companies, let's create what's called a consortium. You gonna handle this area, I'm gonna handle this area. We all gonna pool our resources together to buy a heavy duty so that one of us could get the busing contract and help the other ones out. There were so many things we were able to put together, but that mentality of each one teach one, each one go back. If you're successful, don't be afraid to show somebody how you became successful. We don't have to compete with each other all the time. There's so much money to be made. And the last thing I'll say on the economic front, one of the things we're working on right now is that there is something in North Carolina people don't realize. It's called the Hub Office, the historically underutilized business office, and the office of the governor. What happens is a lot of times these Hub Office, these programs that are intended to help us, end up helping white women. The biggest beneficiaries of DEI have been white women. The biggest beneficiaries of historically underutilized businesses in North Carolina, minority-owned businesses, are white women. So we're working to try to close some of those loopholes, what they call the 51% loophole. So white guy, Mr. Santucci, wants to take advantage of a government contract for Hub. He makes his wife 51% owner of the construction company, and she now qualifies. So we're working to try to close some of those loopholes. That's, I know, for the folks that don't do politics, you got to understand, you don't have to, but politics is going to do you. And I think we're going to, we have to, some of us, I don't think it's for everybody, but some of us have to be engaged in that fight. And we have to be engaged in the fight, for lack of a better way to put it, from a pro-Black perspective, from our community perspective. And that's why, like, the work we do at FDF around economics and the family and all those things, is intertwined. But I think, the last thing I'll say is it's so vitally important what the brother said, being able to go reach out, pull somebody else that you see something in, you see that spark in their eyes, like, hey, that brother want to get it. Come on, let's go. With my business, my personal business, TUC Media, when people say, yo, how did you turn a podcast into a business? How did you do that? I said, well, look, here's what you do. Go buy your equipment. I'll show you what I did. It's 400 million people, is 7 billion on the planet, bro. I can't get everybody to watch what we do. Everybody's not going to. So why am I afraid to show somebody what I did and how the steps that I took to do that? And I think that's how we, one, create the legacy, but two, on the economic front, as far as minority goes, the last thing I'll say is I think we've also got to be very delicate with how we look at the economic condition of Black folks. Because while we say for every dollar in wealth a Black person, every dollar in wealth a white family has, a Black person only has 10 cents, or and that's true. But we also have, if Black people in and of themselves were an independent country, we would be one of the richest independent countries on the planet. We have a lot of purchasing power. Now, let's just talk about the industries that Black people alone prop up. The hair industry, the what they call the non-essential industries, your lotions, your soaps, your deodorants, your there's a report, you can go pull it up, from Nielsen, the company that does all the ratings, and it was called the Southern Sell Strategy. It's basically the Black sell strategy. A wealthy white family will hold on to that Lexus LS400 from 2001 and drive it until the wheels fall off. The Black family got to get the new one every 2 years. We got to go get the new one. Yo, I just got an iPhone 14. I just got one because my iPhone 11 is done. It just won't. But that's the mentality I saw from successful people around me. They were like, yo, why don't you just go buy a really good $50 shirt and take care of it? That way you don't have to spend $10 on a shirt 7 times a year. You just spend 7. Like the mentality of getting things that are worth something keeping them, holding on to them, and like I said, teaching each other these things and being willing to reach back and get one. But there's a lot of work on the economic front. And the last thing, the poverty rate for Black North Carolinians sits right around 18%. What that means, what that tells me is there's a whole bunch of us who got our stuff together. What is this other 18%? About 80% of us got it together. What is this 20% doing that's not correct? What is this what is this other group doing that's not correct? And I dare say it's a lack of financial literacy. It's a lack of understanding that just because you can buy something doesn't mean you need to. I'm very delicate with how I taught my kids how to utilize their credit. Like, yo, if you don't have the money, you don't need it. There's a very interesting, Sister Stephanie, I suggest everybody listen to it. His name is Cotton Weary. Have y'all ever heard of him before? Cotton Weary was he was a slave in the 1930s. He was grew up as a slave. They recorded him. Like, you know how the Library of Congress archive stuff? Listen to what Cotton Weary, who is an actual on the plantation slave, he said, I never borrowed nothing from nobody. If there was something that cost a nickel, I would save a penny a month until I got that nickel to get what I wanted. That's coming from a actual slave who recognized this credit stuff is a trap, especially if you don't know how to use it. So I'll leave that there, but I think you're absolutely right, Brother Winfred. We got to reach back, pull each other on. Financial literacy is key, and being able to work with each other is paramount.
That's good.
And I know we have to go.
Hold on, Jerry. Hold on one second. Abdul, can you spell that last name? Cotton, what was it again?
Weary. Let me pull it up. It's Cotton is his first name, and then Weary. Cotton Weary. Weary, I believe it is.
Got it. Okay. And we're gonna, after Jari speaks, and we're gonna kind of end it there, and we're gonna pick up, the next time that we're actually gonna be meeting. Okay, so
sounds great. So yeah, so just for anybody that's listening, like you have different men up here from different arenas of the fight that everybody is trying to, that everybody is in. You have someone in here who is, with the politics and who has their own podcast. So he's in the politics, he's in the media, and he has the whole family dynamic. You have someone in here who's in the community, my Uncle Winfred, and he's in the church, he's doing other things outside of the church. And you have someone like myself, who doesn't do the politics. But when I want everyone to understand that you are called in different ways.
That's right.
You're called in different ways. You're chosen in different ways, but you have to understand where you're called and where you're chosen at. Many are called, but few are chosen. You can't, everybody ain't chosen. Some people are just called. Everybody ain't chosen. But when I'm saying that, create a system for your family, because like Brother Abdul said, even if you don't do politics like myself, politics still gonna do you. So you have to create a system that works for your family, because regardless of what you want to do, regardless of what you aim for, politics are always going to be politics. The government is always going to try to govern, but that doesn't mean you have to let it abuse you and you have to let it use you. You can create a system for your family. Like my wife and I've created an estate. You can create a trust for your family. Anything in that aspect to where business money can flow, and you can create a legacy in that way. But you also have to start understanding that, say for instance, it's not about black and white. You can't look at everything from a black and white aspect. The world was destroyed one time by a flood. Then there was one man and his family that lived. So when you look at the end of the day, we all cousins, because we all came from one man that was left on the earth, which was Noah, and then all his other sons and all this others. So it's not about black and white. Everybody has the same struggle. But when you have a certain people that are favored above other people and they look a little different, you have to go about the fight differently. When you're favored, things are going to be a little harder. When someone is favored to win the race, they're expected to go about it in a completely different way. The test is going to be harder. The battle's going to be harder. You're going to have a completely different fight, and there's going to be a whole bunch of opposition. So you're going to have to attack it from the aspect of, you already have the blueprint, but you already have the struggle in front of you, and it's going to be hard. You can take all of this advice, but at the end of the day, you have to do what the Most High, what Adonai is calling and telling you to do. We can talk up here all day long, but you have to be the one. If you're a man, you have to lead your family. If you're a woman and you're married, you have to be able to allow for your husband to lead the family and support him in that dynamic, and you lead from that aspect as well. But everyone has to understand that this is a system that's already in place. Your legacy is predicated based off of the system that you already can have in place for yourself. So yeah, and I know she said we're gonna talk next time, so I'm gonna leave that at that. But just take all of this in and sit on it, marinate on it.
And that's exactly what I want everyone to do. Take it all in, sit on it, marinate on it. And I want us, when we come back next time, I want us really to dissect a lot of the things that was said tonight. You know, how does that look? You know, put face with that. Talking about the financial literacy in the school, talking about, the Black man not being in the home. Okay, the woman is in the home. So how does she govern, with her family? How does she govern as far as trying to lead, or help her children, help her son to be the man that he should be, and the daughter to make sure that she's being the woman she needs to become, and not to lead from a place of anger. I want to talk about that, the healing of the emotions, things like that. Also, too, knowing too that the Black family, or the family period, that we are the nucleus of the community. It's like a ripple effect. Once you throw that pebble out there, it's supposed to start from the family and go on. But if that pebble is not doing what it's supposed to do, then it's supposed to be what? The family, the church, the community, the state, the nation, and going on like that. But if that family is not functioning wholly like it should be, then every other entity is gonna be, it's gonna be kind of poison. You understand what I'm saying? So how do we fix that? I want to talk about those things whenever we come back the next time. And by God's grace, I will be operating from my home, so I will be able to get on, and everything will be able to flow a lot better than it did tonight. But I want to let y'all know this is great conversation. This will give a lot of people time to actually look at this, to go back, marinate on it. And I want you all to have questions, put in questions, write down questions, so the next time we can be a little more interactive with asking questions by my guests. But I want to thank you all for being patient, for working with me, with this technology problem and everything. I appreciate you. A lot of wisdom, a lot of nuggets that we'll share tonight. And I'm really excited about the return when we come back 2 Sundays from now. Again, thank you so much. I want you all to remember that, live in victory every day, that we're here for you, making sure that you're being empowered to actually do and be everything that God has called you to be. So again, thank you, and God bless you. And until next time, remember that in and through every situation, we are victorious. So live in victory every day. Amen. In Jesus' name. Until next time, God bless.
Amen. Be safe on your travels, sis.
God bless you all.
Peace.
Thank you.
No problem. Go ahead and end the stream now.
Thank you.